A lot of people ask us, why would you buy a house in this, in this economic downturn? There's a lot that goes behind the decision of buying a house, especially as Indians, right?
Yeah.
Because for us, roti, kapda, और मकान, मतलब बरसों से सुनते आ रहे हैं, right? Like
Correct.
these three are the holy grail of what you're supposed to look like if, you achieved anything, or that's what success is. You should buy a home if you are going to stay in it. People who are working towards it but not there yet, number one, should definitely rent.
Yeah.
It's a great option.
Yeah,
And it's
there's
not-
no point in overstretching.
Exactly. Hi everyone, I'm Sayali
Hi, I'm Niyati.
and welcome to the Finance Happy Hour with FinCocktail.
So today we're going to talk about a really controversial topic which people love debating on, to buy or to rent a home. And this is where I want to ask Sayali because she's taken a strong stance and I want to know her opinion on this.
Okay, so I guess it's against all, a lot of creators nowadays who are talking about, buying versus renting, and how buying may not be the right decision in this day and age, in this sort of economic situation. But me and my husband have bought a home. We bought it about 2 years ago. And we're very happy about it. We're very happy with the decision, very proud of it. But I guess it sort of, erupts the discussion again and again in our mind. A lot of people ask us, why would you buy a house in this, in this economic downturn? This uncertainty around it. And there are lots of these Excel sheets thrown at us, with calculations ki, oh, if you rent a house and compare it to the EMI, you can save so much, and at the end of the 20-30 years, you'll be you'll be so much better off if you just rent the house.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot that goes behind the decision of buying a house, especially as Indians, right?
Yeah.
Because for us, roti, kapda, और मकान, मतलब बरसों से सुनते आ रहे हैं, right? Like
Correct.
these three are the holy grail of what you're supposed to look like if, you achieved anything, or that's what success is.
Absolutely. What were the 2 or 3 key sort of points that you kept in mind while deciding to buy a home? What was it that you felt was very important from the perspective of buying as opposed to renting?
Okay. So it's not that we were against renting, right? It's just we chose to buy at a particular stage in our lives where it made sense. Now, why did it make sense? Number one, yes, we'd done the whole renting situation for about 3 years, and we realized that as renters, you always have these thought processes where you're like, acha, I won't spend this much amount on renovating this house because it's not mine. 2 years down the line, I'll switch and move somewhere else. And then why am I spending so much money to do up the house when I'm going to move anyway in the next 2 years?
Sure.
So that was number one. So that never made me feel like it was mine ever. It never
Gave you that sense of like
Yes.
ownership or security.
Yes, it was never like, ki, acha, just it's mine,
Yeah.
even like a cute stuffed toy or your coffee mug. Somehow it becomes yours.
Yeah.
That sort of possession in your head. So I guess that was number one. Number two was, of course, financial security. You have to build up to it. Buying a home sort of entails a lot more than just renting it, right? Yes, renting has your down payment for whatever, 6 months, 1 year, depending on wherever you are renting it at. But actually buying a house, whether it's on loan, whether you actually are rich enough to afford it as a full down payment, well, if you're able to afford that, I don't think you're having this discussion ever.
Yeah.
But if you're going ahead with taking on a home loan, you still have to have a certain percentage as a down payment, right?
Absolutely.
So being able to afford that, making the calculation that after you take on the loan, after you buy that house, will you be able to sustain your lifestyle, your current lifestyle, and still be able to pay off that EMI every single month without too much of a pressure on you and your spouse, or like in general your family members. So that was one big consideration, and luckily, I guess, we were prepared enough. Again, it doesn't happen overnight.
It takes years and years of sort of thinking this through and like
Yes.
preparing for it in terms of having your savings in place, having your investments in place, deciding what to do with your investments,
Correct.
whether you want to, sort of withdraw, redeem, and then invest in a new property using that sum, or whether you want to just sort of break your FDs. It's all a big decision.
100%. Where does the down payment come from? And it's this, right? So that became our financial goal a few years, few years ago, and we worked towards it, which is why we were able to afford it. And it made sense. It was the right time for us because the real estate market was going through a downturn. This was right after the second wave of COVID, where the real estate prices had broken. And we realized that, some of the houses that we scouted earlier, they had such inflated prices that all of them sort of corrected by then. So it was the right price, it was the right time. Home loan interest rates were at like absurd low levels. Not so much anymore, which we will talk about later. But it made sense. Everything sort of, came together.
But like from you're talking about the financial perspective of it.
Yes.
But what about the emotional aspect, A lot of Indians, like you said, lay a lot of emphasis on owning a home, roti kapda makan. So, but why the makan? Like, why, from an emotional angle, why do you think it's necessary to own a home of your own?
So I'll be very honest. This is an example, like a real life example of that happened to one of my friends. She and her her parents, herself and her sister, lived in a rented house for a good, I think 10, 12 years. That same house. They renovated it completely. They gave it a full makeover, all of that. Obviously, right? Because 10, 12 years you stay in the house, that becomes
home.
Yeah, it becomes your home, and it was essentially their home. But the landlord one day just came up to them and said, my son is coming back from the States, and he's getting married, and his wife and him will want to live here now. So you need to vacate. And they're like, but, and they literally had to move out of the house in 1 month's time because that was what was on their contract. Imagine moving your life for the last 15, 20 years, and her parents were not young anymore. Her parents were touching 55, 60 years old. At that age, sort of moving your entire life from one house to the other, scrambling to find a house in that specific time period.
Budget,
in the budget, in the time period, the kind of stuff that you have, where you have to put it. And since it's all furnished, you have to find whatever, a furnished home or whatever. It was a real sort of
nightmare.
It was a nightmare. And I think
we've heard so many of these stories in COVID as well, where people did get affected in terms of, renters got affected, where the landlords were probably just being a little bit unreasonable in terms of, either wanting their rent on time when people weren't even getting paid a salary.
Agreed.
Or,
they were even hiking the prices up.
Yeah.
That happened to us, by the way. It was after we bought the house. But when we were, getting the house done, the interior work was going on. And and it was obviously delayed by a couple of months. You know how that happens. But we asked our landlord for an extension on our lease for just 2 months. And we were very good with our rent. We always paid upfront and all of that. And he didn't have another renter yet. It was not like, he had somebody coming
waiting.
Yeah, so that we had to vacate. He said, "Nahi, sorry, aapko almost double price bharna padega for the house itself." I mean, this is just because he knows.
He knows you all are desperate. He knows for 2 months you don't want to shift somewhere else.
Exactly.
And then go into your new house.
Exactly.
He knows. So yeah, that's the challenge when it comes to renting. It's never really yours. So you never really can.
You never call the shots.
Yeah, you never really can call the shots.
And which is, I think these two instances just really solidified the decision in my head. My husband always wanted to buy his own home. I think he was just like, that's my aim. But I think that's, again, he's more emotionally involved in that. He finds it like it has to be mine.
Right.
Like if it's mine, then baki, everything else I will sort, but I need my own home.
Yeah.
But again, that also sort of comes from our parents on some level.
It does.
Right?
It definitely does come from the parents.
Yeah. Because our parents also were brought up in this sort of day and age where, again, it's the sense of security that is valued the most.
Absolutely.
Where our parents also were, I mean, both our parents didn't come from affluent backgrounds, etc.
Absolutely.
They worked their way up. And for them to build a house, to buy that house that they live in today was a huge achievement.
Yeah.
And kudos to them. But that also set up that as a dream for us,
Yeah.
right? Where that's something that you achieve in the future.
Absolutely. So you mentioned something about EMIs and loans and stuff. So did you get your house on a loan, or how did you sort of figure out the upfront and the loan bit of it?
Okay, I am not that rich that I can just buy a house in Bombay without any loan. Not yet. Hopefully someday. But yes, we did buy the home on loan. Little pro tip: if you apply for a joint loan as husband and wife, and both your credit scores are good, you get a great rate, like the best rate that's available. Because both of you, if you have a two-income household and both your credit rate, like your CIBIL scores are good, you get the best rate available, because if not one, the other person is there to sort of back you up.
Nice.
And yes, we did take it on loan. We gave about 20% as
Upfront payment.
Yes, as the down
payment.
Yeah, as the down payment. Even though we were allowed, by the way, when we applied for the loan, we were allowed to take about 90% of the value of the house as loan, like as the whole loan. But we said, you know what? That becomes too much of an EMI, because then automatically, right, your EMI increases.
Yeah.
So he said, we have that kind of money right now, so then might as well do a 20% down payment. Also, I have to give credit where credit is due. My husband was great, and he's great at negotiating. Okay, all the finance gyan that I give, I am horrible at negotiating. I cannot do it to save my life. He actually has gone to different banks and gotten us a rate which was like the lowest at that time, which was something like 6.1%.
Wow.
Yeah, which was unheard of, right? And we went to 3 banks, if I'm not wrong. Again, we can talk about this later when it's about, when you apply for loans, there are hard checks and soft checks. So when you apply for a home loan and you do your KYC, and you go to your bank and they do a hard credit check.
Okay.
That's essentially going to the body itself and telling them that this person has applied for a loan.
Okay.
And I need to know their credit score to give them a rate.
Okay.
We actually had to stop a couple of the banks to we couldn't let all 3 or all 4 banks do the hard check. Because every hard check becomes
affects your score.
Yes, affects your score. So 2 banks did hard checks on us, and they talk internally. So the moment 2 checks went, we got a call from our banks being like, sir, are you going with the other bank? Ma'am, are you going, I'll give you a better rate. It was like a bidding war going on. But that's what happens essentially. And but yeah, that's much more into the process. That's not about buying or renting. But once you're in it, you might as well get the best rate.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So yeah. And again, this was a floating rate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So does that mean that your interest rate goes up with, every interest rate hike that's happened over the past couple of years?
Yes, this is where I cry now.
Wow. So that must really take an impact on your monthly EMIs.
So it's funny, now why, like a lot of people ask us that, why didn't you go for the fixed rate instead of the floating? First of all, at 6.1, the fixed rate was 8%.
Oh, so that was a
8 or 8.5
difference.
Significant difference. And by the way, that fixed rate was only valid for 2 years. After that, that also becomes a floating rate.
Oh,
yes.
So then you guys made a great decision, because for 2 years, almost a year and a half, the interest rate
100%.
wasn't getting hiked. The interest rate hikes have been happening over the past 6-8 months.
Correct. So then, like, mota moti, it wouldn't have made a difference for us.
Correct.
But we did save for those first 2 years.
Yeah.
On the floating rate, because it was so low.
Okay.
So yeah, that was just an interesting fact that I didn't know about before I applied for the home loan, because I thought fixed rate, it's a higher rate, but it stays fixed.
Correct.
Just for 2 years. I was like, this is such a con.
Sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So does your EMI increase each month with and every increase in interest rate?
So again, this I did not know until it actually happened with us. But your EMI doesn't increase with the interest rate hike. Your tenure increases. So because they know that you are, you have this as whatever your EMI, and you've been paying it on a monthly basis.
Sure.
They don't want to increase the EMI because that means that you'll be paying less interest.
Correct. If you over the longer term.
Yes, over the longer term. So for like 25-year loan or whatever you apply for, that automatically became something like 36 or 37 years.
Wow. Okay.
And the moment that happens, your EMI contribution goes towards your interest payments. And as long as your principal payments are not going down, your interest will keep adding up. So essentially, you end up paying much more interest in the long term.
Okay.
Because your tenure is higher. So I've done this, like it's really funny. If anybody wants to know, they can quickly send us a DM or write it in the comment. But I have this like massive Excel sheet which compares EMIs with tenure and this.
Yeah, I've seen you like sit and work on that sheet so many times. Yeah. So I know that you've got some sort of calculation going on behind this whole thing.
Yeah, so what happened was the moment all these interest rate hikes started happening, we had to make a decision, right? Because we had to figure out whether we want to
increase the EMI amount, or you want to increase the
let the tenure stand where it is.
Okay.
And on top of that, we were also thinking if this interest rate keeps getting hiked, we much rather prepay some amount.
Yeah.
And reduce the burden for us, which is the future.
Correct.
So a lot of people say that interest instead of paying off your loan, you may want to invest it in your SIPs or whatever, and then pay it off in 5 years. And I made the the Excel sheet. I made the assumptions of whatever 12%. I was like basic. I was like, even if I put it in an index fund, which will give me 12% returns.
Yeah.
And in 5 years, I wanted to prepay instead of today. And right now, I keep the EMI amount reduced according to the higher tenure. The problem is, in 5 years, if we are faced with something like today, the volatility of today, I may not want to withdraw that amount.
Correct.
So it's not a guarantee that in 5 years I will
100% get that 11-12% kind of return on your investment.
And then I'll prepay at that point. But it is a guarantee that if I increase my tenure, I will pay much more interest on it.
Okay.
And I'm talking about much more, I'm talking in lakhs, okay? It goes up to 25 lakhs worth of interest that I have saved by prepaying versus something like 24, 23 lakhs I would have paid extra if I just let the tenure be. So I think number one, yes, with the interest rate hikes, your EMIs do not increase from the bank directly. They just simply increase your tenure. Because that means that you will end up paying more interest.
Sure.
Number two, I would have preferred to keep my EMI the same, not reduce it, because that means that I'm sort of prepaying small amounts to the principal every single month. So that reduces my interest as well. And third, as much as possible, whenever we get bonuses or have chunks of money, just prepay the loan. It's much easier.
Right. So evidently you've done so much research behind your decision, and I don't think you regret making this decision, right?
Not at all.
So what do you think about people who actually want to rent a home? Who should be renting a home, and why would it make sense for them? Because not everyone can really afford to do this.
Correct.
Buying a home is a huge decision. It has a huge monetary and a financial impact. So not everyone can do it. You said you were at that point in time in life where you could, but not everyone's there.
Correct.
So then who should be renting? Why does it make sense for them to rent as opposed to buying?
It's funny, but one thing that my grandmother always says, it's in Marathi, so just bear with me for a minute. सगळ्याचं सोंग आणता येतं, पैशाचं सोंग नाही आणता येत. It means that you can pretend to be rich, you can pretend to you can pretend to have a lot of friends, you can pretend a lot on social media, whatever, but you cannot pretend to have money. Either you have money or you don't.
Yeah.
So the first thing you already answered, I guess. The people who are not there yet, people who are working towards it but not there yet, number one, should definitely rent because
Yeah.
it's a great option.
Yeah,
It's
there's
not-
no point in overstretching.
Exactly. And if it takes 5 more years, let it.
Yeah.
Like it's better than sort of spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah.
Secondly, oh, I love this. Okay, so I've also lived on rent quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
And at that time, I was single. I didn't have dependent either aging, like retired parents or children at that point where they were dependent on me to, like, provide a living for them. I was by myself. I was working. I was studying. I was doing whatever I wanted. I didn't know where I wanted to be in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So if you're at that stage where in the next 2 years you don't know where you want to live, which city you want to be in,
Yeah.
where work may take you,
Yeah.
definitely rent, because it gives you the flexibility.
Yeah.
It gives you the option to move on a, like,
Whim.
on a whim, on a drop of a hat. You can just be like, oh, great opportunity, I'm moving to Bangalore. Great opportunity, I'm moving to London. Hopefully someday.
Fair enough. So I think what you mean to say is that people who don't have too many responsibilities, who want the flexibility of moving around, and who probably aren't ready just yet, maybe financially, maybe emotionally, however, those are the ones that should be renting.
Yes.
Who should actually be buying? And then when I talk about buying, I also want you to tell me a little bit about what can I really afford?
Yeah.
How much should I be sort of taking into account when it comes to my monthly EMIs, that sort of stuff.
Okay, so who should be buying? Again, it's a very personal decision. Like we've talked about our journey of money. This is one decision or one financial goal that a lot of people have, but they need to understand the gravity of it, because that means that you see yourself staying in the same city, staying in the same house, at least for the next 5 to 7 years. Because if you're taking on a loan, it's not going to be for like 5 years, 10 years. It's going to be for like 20, 25.
Yeah.
Okay, mortgages come in that sort of tenure. And they are expensive. So,
Absolutely.
obviously. So, make sure that you are mentally and emotionally ready to be in that stage. Oh, sorry, I forgot. First things first, you should buy a home if you are going to stay in it. Okay? There are lots of these, like I said right in the beginning of this episode, that lots of Excel sheets that calculate, that at the end of 20 whatever years, you'll be better off renting rather than buying. That's because they calculate the rental yield. So they think that if you're buying it as an investment and then you're going to rent it out to somebody, then that has a whole other ball
It's
game.
a whole other ball
Yeah,
game,
because then you look at real estate as an investment.
Yeah.
And there are other ways to invest in real estate. Like, multiple other ways. But if you're buying a home, if you want to stay in it for the next 5 to 7 years, then yes, then if you're emotionally ready to take on that kind of, responsibility and that kind of financial burden for the next few years, yes, maybe then you're ready. In terms of how much you should spread yourself thin, make sure that you do not push yourself itna that कि मतलब lifestyle ही बदल दो या जीना ही छोड़ दो. That's not what we want you to do.
That's not even realistic. I mean, you might be able to
Exactly.
do that for a few months, but over the longer term, you still want to live the same life that you've been living.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a rule that says, if you want to go to buy a house, the entire amount of the house should not be more than 5 times your annual income. But let's be very realistic. In huge cities like Bombay, Delhi, even Bangalore
in
now.
the metros, I think this is a metric which
Exactly.
might not be applicable or might not work all the time.
Exactly.
Because it really depends on which area, how big the house is,
I know. And it's so overcrowded that the prices of real estate have already gone through the roof.
Yeah.
So it's not realistic that you may find that kind of house in that price range. So instead, what I like to sort of, look at is the debt to income ratio. That's easier to calculate, and that actually measures how much you will spread yourself thin.
Okay.
So don't let your EMI be more than 50% of your monthly income. Yes. So, and why I say EMI, because it should account for all of your EMIs. But if you've had a home loan and a car loan and some personal loan, all those EMIs should not be more than 50%. Because that's your debt to income ratio.
Right.
Okay, so don't take on so much debt that your full salary is going in EMIs only.
Yeah.
So
then you can't take care of your savings or investments.
And that is the first thing that will suffer.
Yeah.
So then your future will look dire. You won't be able to save for retirement. You won't be able to move into a bigger house. You won't be able to buy that bigger car. You know, it's not fair to your future self.
Sure.
So I think that's a better metric to sort of look at.
Right.
And that also helps you figure out whether you're ready or not.
Correct.
If you have too many loans, maybe taking on a huge home loan may not be the right.
Might not make sense at this point in time.
Exactly. So slowly sort of, take care of those loans first and then go and buy a home when you're like, debt free in that other sense.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's my 2 cents on buying a home. And yes, of course, it's a gut feeling finally.
Yeah.
It's a personal choice. It's something that if you and your family who's going to live in that house is willing to make sacrifices in terms of your lifestyle, but chotu ones, not big ones. And if you're going to be able to afford it, if you're going to be able to take care of each other through it, and you're going to love living there, why not?
Absolutely. Great. I love how you've summed this up.
Thanks.
Okay, guys, so that's it from us for this episode. I think Sayali has really decoded this for us, whether it makes sense to buy, whether it makes sense to rent, who should be buying, who should be renting. She seems really happy with her decision, but I hope we've managed to help you make this decision as well. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to be talking all about insurance.